Hello and welcome to the Stack Magazine's podcast. My name is Stephen Watson and I run Stack, the magazine club that delivers a different independent publication to your door every month. My guest for this episode is Sophie Barshall, founding editor of Toe Rag, the London-based arts magazine that takes the form of a tabloid newspaper and bends that familiar format to its own ends. The 7th issue launched last week, dropping into the midst of Frieze London and bringing its own very distinctive vision of the city's arts and culture. And so this is kind of the perfect time to be speaking to her, although I imagine maybe a little bit tired from last week. Sophie, thank you very much for taking the time to speak.
Thank you for having me.
So, look, I sort of think of Toe Rag as kind of existing between things. So, as I say, like, it's a magazine, but it's also really built as a newspaper. And it's interested in like artists working independently and non-profit, but it's also distributed at Frieze London. So, like, what's your motivation in making this? Where did the idea for Toe Rag come from?
I should first say that it's distributed unofficially at Frieze London.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah, it's very like we take a DIY approach, I guess, to even things that sound a bit official, like the magazine being at Frieze. So we're not a partner of Frieze at all. Last year, I was asked to leave the Frieze premises with the magazines and subsequently went into the fair with my press pass a few hours later, which was kind of funny. But yeah, we're standing with the art newspaper actually, like just at the exits. And yeah, just using that opportunity to get the magazine out there. I mean, I think with doing something like distributing at Frieze, you accept that maybe half of the copies that you hand out aren't going to be read by people. But the magazine is funded on advertising, and it's important to also do some of these things just for a bit of kind of publicity and the profile of the publication. But at the same time, I think probably half of our contributors got the magazine at the gates of Frieze already, because that was our first, before we've even sent them out, we went to print, and then the magazines arrived the next day, and then the day after that, we were handing them out at the fair. The people
and you told me, you just mentioned that there was some kind of emergency intervention for storing the magazines.
Yeah, so because the turnaround was so quick, and also so everyone involved in the Toe Rag has other jobs. So we're all doing this on the side of other things, which means that we're all quite pressed for time, and things often have to happen quite quickly. And we went to print, and that afternoon I ran to Regent's Park and just went around like with one of our editors, maybe like 20 different shops, asking if there was any chance that people would let us store the magazines there for the duration of Frieze. And this really lovely pub called the Albany, which is right by Regent's Park. Oh no, sorry, right by Great Portland Street Station, said that we could store the magazines there, which was so kind, unbelievably kind, and completely saved us because, and we don't really have so much money for things like, if I had to bring them in taxis every day, we can't really afford to do things like that. So it was very generous and amazing and let us do the whole thing. And then the next day, the magazines arrived. The next day, we're distributing them. So it was all quite a turnaround and a big team effort with lots of amazing people helping.
I mean, it sounds incredibly stressful.
Yeah, it is a bit stressful. It is a bit. I think this issue, our Frieze issue, is the most intense in that way, because then we also had our launch party at the ICA on Friday the 17th, so halfway through freeze. So that's another thing to organize. But that we kept it quite simple for this launch, and we didn't do any readings or extras. We just had drinks and magazines. And
I love it. We kept it quite simple. We just had a party at the ICA. We have different ideas of simple.
Yeah, but it was a really good launch. I was so pleased with it, and the ICA were amazing, and it was really fun.
So tell me then, am I right in saying that it all started in 2023?
Yes. So
right.
The first issue launched in December 2023, and I think it was probably about 8 months from the point of maybe just having this idea to the first issue being in print.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So tell me about the idea then. What was the thing that made you actually want to make this in the first place?
So I think it kind of happened, on a personal level, it was, I guess in a way it was all personal, but I did a master's degree in history of art. I moved back to London, and I really wanted to get maybe like an institutional job, something. No, I didn't really want to work in a commercial gallery, but I wanted to do something either in an editorial role, but I was mainly looking at the visual arts. And it was really hard to get a job, like so hard. I had no idea what it was going to be like. You'd look on LinkedIn and there would be 800 other people who had applied for the same position. And I did that for about I didn't last very long. I think I did about 3 months of applying for jobs in this way, and being so disappointed and not really understanding what I was supposed to do, or, a lot of these are minimum wage jobs, and they're entry level positions, but that when you're competing against 800 other people, that there are going to be a lot of other people applying who have maybe even 3 years in an equivalent role. So it's really hard to know how to even begin. And I think that this is the experience of a lot of my contemporaries. And basically I was just pretty miserable, and I didn't know what to do. So I kind of paused and thought, okay, I have to stop and rethink my strategy because it's not working. And in that period, I kind of thought, well, if the jobs that I'm so upset about not getting are all minimum wage jobs pretty much anyway, or, London living wage then maybe I should get a job in another, just like a more random job that pays a little bit better, and start my own project on the side. And maybe that's another approach that could be even more rewarding, because I'll have more creative control and this sort of thing. So that's where maybe I got the energy to start my own project. And then I think the toe rag as a concept evolved from also me moving back to London after a long time of being away at various different universities, and wanting to reintegrate, or maybe integrate into the city for the first time as an adult, and not really knowing how, and finding more and more these amazing independent venues that and projects and realizing that a lot of them only really had the budget to advertise their programming on Instagram, because so many of them are just surviving like month to month. It's really like word of mouth and social media that allows them to share what they're doing. And it took me quite a while to find a lot of them, which is part of the fun, of course. But I sort of had this idea that, like, maybe to have a resource for people that brought all of these different things together, because Instagram's so overwhelming already. Like, it's so hard to know what to choose to do. And um yeah, I thought maybe if there was a place that sort of was for all of these projects and places
But
that,
then it's quite a leap to go from saying like, okay, so I want to make this place, to then
yeah,
saying I want to make a newspaper, which is like a free newspaper, which is going to be ad funded, which is like I mean, it's like difficult to make anything in print these days, but
mm,
to be making an ad funded free newspaper is like, I sort of don't know how you do it. That's like, it must be incredibly difficult.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a bit difficult. um, I think honestly, the actual distribution model sort of emerged. It wasn't foundational in the idea, but newspaper lends itself very well to having a high print run, and therefore to being free and ad funded, because um, compared to a glossy, it is relatively inexpensive to print. We use like the heaviest weight of newspaper, which is a bit more expensive, and get staples, make it nice, so that's a bit more expensive. But even still, it's much cheaper than doing other kinds of magazines. Um, so that sort of emerged once it was in print. Well, the first issue we printed 6,000, and I think about 5,000 of those were delivered by me and my parents driving me around because I can't drive.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I had to ask mum and dad. That's such a like Londoner's problem, I think. And then Rachel, who's one of our editors, she also did quite a lot. And yeah, we had them at the launch. But I just kind of turned up to a ton of places and I was like, hey, would you take these? So it was quite fun. It's nice because you meet a lot of people doing it all in person. Um, but sorry, I haven't really answered your question. I mean, the leap. So when I was doing my master's, I was involved as an editor and writer, I guess, in a magazine called The Burner, which I kind of ran with, I think there were maybe 12 of us. There were quite a lot of us involved. And it was a really fun project. And we used to do like parties and hang out, which was quite fun. We did 2 issues. And I think that's sort of sparked the idea of maybe doing print for me.
But so it feels like you approach it in a very I guess kind of DIY sort of way. So you run a crowdfunding campaign to get the money to print the first one.
Yeah.
You got this magazine, you drove it around to places and dropped it off.
Yeah.
Like, what's your experience been like on the side of trying to get advertisers to pay for space? Because basically, like those 2 bits of it, like crowdfunding campaign, going and dropping things off, I can sort of see how that happens. The bit that I find amazing is that advertisers are supporting it and making it happen.
Well, I suppose, I think in the UK, luxury and DIY, like I think that high-end luxury brands have quite an intuitive understanding maybe of the way that um DIY culture is important for them. I mean, like Vivienne Westwood maybe is like a good example of something like this. Like punk. No, I don't know if Vivienne Westwood is still punk, but punk is in the DNA of Vivienne Westwood, right? And I think that, particularly with fashion, I think that people really understand this crossover. And I think the challenge then as the DIY project is to maintain your integrity, I suppose. But there's a degree of compromise, whatever your model is. You're always having to work things out. And, I haven't found that the pressures on us from advertising have put significant restrictions on the kind of content we're creating, or content not being digital content, by the way, because we really are like print. Like, people talk about like digital strategy being like their leading model, but we are very much like print led. Instagram's very important for us, as particularly for our live events, like our launches. I think that is really how we get the word out, but we're really thinking of the print magazine most of all, which is kind of like not very contemporary of us.
But then I imagine that's also what the brand's responding to. So, I mean, you've got like Dover Street Market on the outside back cover of this one. Is that you literally just like finding somebody there, putting the magazine in front of them and saying, hey, do you want to be part of this?
Oh, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of so many things. I think it's like, sometimes people find us, like Selfridges. They picked up the magazine at Jumbie in Peckham, and it was a rainy day. They told me this whole story. They're like, it was raining, we were stuck inside, we found this newspaper magazine thing, and we sat there for 2 hours and we couldn't stop reading it. So that was very sweet. And they emailed us and said, hey, we just found the magazine, we want to advertise. So that was really cool. And I think in my experience of doing this so far, things usually come from other people. That advertising often works out when they come to you instead of you going to them. There are exceptions to that. But even with those exceptions, they've usually heard of the magazine before we write to them. And I think that people still people understand what advertising in print means, which is like not that you're going to reach the most people. There's just no way you can compete with digital in that respect. But it's cultural capital, I suppose, and people understand the value of that. And I think also having a highly engaged audience, which is something you can't really guarantee with digital as well. Like, I think that for the most part, and maybe with the exception of something like Freeze, where we're standing there and being like, do you want a magazine? Which is very good advertising in another way. In a way that's the best advertising. But in terms of people really engaging with the content, I think that most people who pick it up hopefully are actually reading it. So you can make some kind of guarantees there, I suppose.
Yeah. And then so I mean, look, this is all one part of it, but obviously you need to have a product that people want to be part of, like you said, that people want to read. And the thing that I love about toe rags, I mean, I don't count myself as being particularly in sort of like the fashion crowd or the art crowd or like, you know, kind of anything, but toe rag can give me this lovely vicarious like feeling of like being part of this city. Like the, you know, I read the event listings in Torag and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love to live in that city. That looks amazing. I think you do a great job of just like creating this like kind of almost like milieu of like, you know, this is our London basically.
That's nice.
But then also like you have such fun with it because you take all these like newspapery things like kind of, you know, the crossword and like the agony and like the star sign stuff. And like it feels like all that stuff is just as important an ingredient as like, you know, the long form writing or anything else.
I feel that it is. And I think the really nice thing about a print magazine is that you're creating something that has like a beginning and an end. And you're like, I love that variation of content because I can like, I think the way that I would like to approach reading a magazine is to be able to kind of flip between something that is like maybe a bit more lighthearted and then back to like a more serious long form essay. And in theory, I really want people to read the Torag cover to cover. Like I want it to feel like a varied enough and also fun enough and interesting enough reading experience that you can, or maybe that you could read it in two sittings and would enjoy doing that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, because I guess in those back pages, you're also then counting, what's it called? Like the section for things happening.
The listing section.
I feel like it's called like it's like shock of the now or
Oh
something.
yeah, Hector's. Yeah, the shock of the now.
So like all that stuff is quite it's quite transactional. Like you know, it's like sort of here's a bunch of interesting stuff that you could go and do, and then also you have the like almost the sort of like classified ads, which is, and it's sort of it's borrowing from all of these like tropes of the newspaper, but also genuinely like staying really true to what you're doing with Torag. It feels like it's kind of, when I said before that I feel like it's between things, it feels like this magazine / newspaper, it sits in between all of these different sort of forms, but somehow manages to be its own thing.
That's nice. No, I think that's definitely, I mean, people sometimes ask me like, is it a newspaper? Is it a magazine? Which one should I call it? And I just say, well, I think it's a bit confusing for people if I call it a newspaper and there's no news. But it borrows a lot from newspapers and the page 3 as well. In which
I love the page 3. I love the page 3.
Quite, you know, some full frontal nudity this time.
So we should explain, because the page 3 might not be, it's obviously a very British thing, but
not everyone knows what it is.
So in the Sun newspaper for a long time, on page 3 there was always a topless girl, and you've like kind of taken that and like, you know, obviously done your own thing with it. So this issue on page 7, you have your page 3, which is this time it's Cozy Fanny Tutti, with, and I think, am I right in saying that's actually a page 3 image? Like it's actually like a glamour model shot.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an archival image, I think from 1977. And I'm not sure if it was ever used for page 3, but it was when Cozy Fanny Tutti was putting together a modeling portfolio, because she was doing kind of some like she wanted to become a page 3 model. So this photo is you know, to show as an example of the kind of work she could do, as far as I understand. She has a show open in Hull right now, and the the image is part of the show, which sort of like shows the crossover between the kind of like sex. She was doing sex work and she was also doing music, and the show is sort of talking about the ways that those intersected and that they weren't completely separate practices or concerns of hers. Yeah.
But so it's kind of unusual for you to have actual glamour photography on page 3. So what do you normally do with that?
Well, we had quite a cheeky one. It's usually underwear, but we've been doing our models are often talent. So like musicians, I do inverted commas because that's what they call it in modeling. You know, like talent is talent's when you like get to be yourself instead of being a clothes hanger. So it's good to be talent. But obviously it's a bit tricky asking people to do a topless shoot if they're also representing themselves as an artist. So we didn't do one for the last issue. But yeah, this time we did a more page 3.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, we're trying to do our own. We're not just trying to put also our page 3 is always photographed by women. That's something I should say. Yeah.
Right.
We're trying to do our own thing with it, our own take.
Well, as we've established, that is what you do. you take all of these established things and do your own version of it. So the theme of this issue is pastoral.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me why you decided to go with that?
Well, our themes are often the product of sort of long disagreements between the editors, and sometimes they're not. And this time I think Rachel came up with the pastoral. We had been thinking about having some sort of natural theme because we had done technology 2 issues before, and then we had done artifacts. The consumption issue was our second issue, and that was the closest we've come to doing something that engaged a lot with ecology, although these themes come into almost every issue, of course. And we didn't want to do the nature issue, so with the pastoral, because we thought it was already sort of a very like rich
yeah, right. And then
construct.
Probably doesn't need to be said, for the pastoral issue you didn't go with a beautiful idyllic bucolic scene on the cover. You went with this like incredibly stark cover. What is the image that's on there?
I mean, it's quite abstract even for me. It's a horseshoe, and then it has like a not, when I say even for me, I mean that I love the image, but I can't give you a complete explanation of it. It's yeah. I mean, so it's a horseshoe, and then underneath it is I don't actually know the name of these, but you know, like a color grid, which you use to match colors. But it almost looks like a makeup palette. It's not like completely clear what it is, but I guess I really liked that image because I suppose throughout the issue we're talking about how, or like several, you know, our contributors are thinking about how the pastoral is a construct or it is an idealization. And so to have the horseshoe set against this very kind of like, and it has this color grid which has these very bright pops of color. For me, this image holds this tension a lot. And
then underneath that, there's like, is it a list of all the contributors in the?
Yeah, and underneath there's a list of our contributors and the names of their pieces.
So I think this is a pretty good overview of what TORAG is about, in that, like, let's take something that you think and then like do a complete left turn on it. Let's like sort of look at it in a completely different point of view. Now, you're like 7 issues into it now. You've been doing this for a few years, so you sort of like got a handle on it. Does it feel different to you now compared to like when the whole thing started?
Oh, yes. I think that I I knew when I started that I would look back at when I had begun and think, "Oh, she was so naive." I knew that I didn't know a lot of things, and I didn't want to maybe have to wait until I felt like I knew everything to start. And each issue, really think improves on the one before it. And I think I can speak for everyone involved that we're all learning all the time. A lot of us are, a lot of us only finished our university degrees in the last 3 years. Um, and yeah, it's been a lot of learning on the job. So it does feel different because I feel like I know how things work now. And um I feel, yeah, it's easier in many ways.
Mm,
And
mm, mm.
it's that there was a moment where I didn't have to always explain the project to people. When people start to hear about it a little bit, that's a really nice phase. Um, and then, yeah, you can get on with the work that you want to do a bit more easily. And
Yeah.
we can work with people who we'd like to commission. That's easier now as you build up a reputation, and also advertising. I think, part of getting advertising is you have to be a legitimate brand. You have to feel like a place that people are willing to invest money and they feel like it's a safe investment, or and that just takes a bit of time.
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
you have to do a few issues, I think, for people to feel like, okay, this is something that's going to continue and I can rely on them to deliver what they're promising. So this also gets a bit easier. Um,
Yeah. And thinking back to when you set it up, so you started it as a social enterprise, like as a community interest company.
yeah, yeah,
What was the thinking behind that, and how have you found that, like, over the years?
yeah. I mean, a lot of people ask me about this. I think I just never. Um, it seemed maybe just like an obvious approach because so many of the spaces that I was interested in featuring in the magazine were non-profits already. And then I also never really thought that we were going to make enough money to worry about things like whether we're a non-profit or not. Like, I think that it's reflected in it. I think it's part of, and I like how it positions the work we're doing. I think that it helps people understand. I mean, we're all volunteers. We don't, our editorial team don't get paid. It really is being a CIC. It reflects the kinds of spaces and projects that we're including in the magazine, but it also reflects the kind of work that we're doing as a magazine, which is like, it really does have a social outlook and function, I suppose, and community, because we are. I mean, it would be very nice to be able to pay ourselves. It's not the objective to always be unpaid, but it is the reality of this kind of work for, I think, 95% of people doing it right now. Um, and sometimes we get donations, and I think that being a CIC is helpful for people to understand what they're giving money towards. In theory, it would make it easier for us to get grants, but we haven't got a single Arts Council grant we've applied for. So yeah.
But I mean, who's getting those grants though these days? I don't know. I don't know if that even happens.
I don't know. I wish it was us. It's honestly, yeah. The funding, yeah. I think it's a terrible situation, that the lack of public funding for the arts in this country. Like, sometimes people say to me, "Oh, is the toe rag your passion project then?" And I really hate when people say that, because I think it really undermines like the labor that goes into something like this. Like this is not a passion. This is the only way to make this sort of work right now, is to be unpaid. So the choice is either you do it unpaid or you don't do it at all. And I think I'm working with a group of people who see this sort of thing as essential and are willing to do it because of that. But yeah, I think the idea that for like labor to be legitimate, it has to be paid is very strange. And it's not the reality of the arts. It's not, that's not what it is to be an artist, and it's not what it is to be an independent magazine or, any of these projects. Like, and yeah, we republished an open letter in this issue, which I think I was so, it's on maybe the 46th page, just very close to the back. And it was signed by, I think, 10 different small presses, independent presses. And I was so happy when I saw it. And we had about a day to get in touch with them and ask their permission before we went to print if we could republish this. But it just articulated so much that I had been feeling and worrying about. And it's not reassuring to hear that everyone else is in the same situation, but it is reassuring that there are other people who are trying to do something about it. And I don't know, something I keep saying at the moment is that I kind of think that if it doesn't feel like possible that the arts are going to get more public funding, and that maybe we need to like look to the US or something, and have more of a culture of patronage and private donation and better tax benefits for people who do this sort of thing, because there are people with money to spend, but I don't know how you have to make it easier for them to support this kind of work. And, particularly like what we're doing, which is like engaging quite a lot with emerging artists and writers. You have to help people understand this is a long-term benefit that they would be investing in, and not going to see. It's not like a return on investment that happens quickly, or I don't know, anything like that. It's just like, but you're supporting like artistic infrastructure and the benefits of this.
But as you say, there are people out there who are interested in that and will do it. So I think, look, I mean, you've proven your track record with doing it with brands. Surely, like, this is the next target has to be one of these people who wants to make it happen.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Look, I like, as you can probably tell, I'm a big fan of the tow rag, and I really appreciate what you're doing. So, so thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time to tell me about it now.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you so much for having me.